The end result of all this is that of the approximately $1 trillion in the so-called first phase or tranche of savings cuts adopted by this plan, they're pretty much all from discretionary spending, defense and non-defense, Head Start, Pell Grants, education, and defense. The second phase is the part that bothers me and really worries me, I'd say. The proposal before us sets up a committee, 12 members of Congress, equal in terms of party allocation. They have the opportunity to deal with the problems that are left out of this and have this be a fairer proposal to get America back in balance, and that is to deal with the entitlements and deal with the revenues, tax reform, entitlement reform, whatever you want to call it. But will they? And if they don't, if the two parties' priority political and ideological interests are reflected in the committee and stop it from dealing with entitlements and revenues and then reflected on the floor, then there's an automatic mechanism for cutting an additional $1.2 trillion to $1.5 trillion. And that all comes out of discretionary spending, defense and non-defense. Now, some of my other colleagues have come to the floor to describe the impact on non-defense discretionary spending. Really, most of what we know is government, education, healthcare, environmental protection, transportation, et cetera, et cetera. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I'm on the Homeland Security Committee, privileged to be chair. My priority in my service in the Senate has been our national security. And I'll tell you this, Mr. President, if that sequester ever went into effect, it would have a devastating impact on the ability of our men and women in uniform and their leaders to protect our security in what remains a dangerous world. The initial $1 trillion of cuts mandated in this proposal include $350 billion over the 10 years from defense, as I understand the numbers. President Obama had earlier directed the Department of Defense to cut $400 billion from their spending over the next decade. The Department of Defense is working on that. General Dempsey, Martin Dempsey, soon to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee, said that he was working on that. He thought he could accomplish it, but it wasn't going to be easy. He was asked, what would happen if you went beyond you were demanded to go beyond the $400 billion in cuts from defense over the next 10 years? And he said it would be extraordinarily difficult and involve very high risk to our national security. He's not against cuts in defense. I'm not against cuts in defense, but they got to be reasonable. Because in the end, the first responsibility of our national government is to protect our security. If we don't have security, we don't have anything else. We don't have freedom, we don't have prosperity, we don't have anything else. And the world is full of people who want to do us damage, who want to kill us, who want to bring down our civilization, who are involved in an ideological, some sense theological clash with us. And I'm just saying that if the Joint Committee, the Special Committee, cannot reach agreement, or it reaches agreement and Congress rejects its proposals, there'll be an automatic cut in defense of an additional $500 to $600 billion over the next decade. Add that to the $350 already in the first phase mandated by this proposal. You've got $1 trillion in cuts. We're just not going to be protected as we have to be. It's as simple as that, and it's just unfair. And not only unfair, it's irresponsible. The fact is, well, Admiral Mullen was in Afghanistan over the weekend, and he had a conversation with some of our troops that got a lot of attention from the media. One of the soldiers got up and said, Admiral Mullen, we're following this debt debate in Congress. Can you promise us that we'll get paid regularly in the coming weeks? And Admiral Mullen quite honestly said, I don't know, because it wasn't clear whether we were going to come to an agreement and avoid a default. Well, I'll tell you, Mr. President, if this full package goes forward and the Joint Committee doesn't reach a different result in recommendation, and $1 trillion of cuts are imposed on our national security defense department budget over the next 10 years, whoever is chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff when this goes into effect, it'll be General Dempsey. He'll still be there. Fortunately, in January of 2013, when they're asked, will we get paid, I believe they're still going to say, I don't know. Some of you will. We may have to have a reduction in end strength in the force and number of people we have protecting our country. And if families of men and women in uniform for the U.S. ask if this total package of cuts goes into effect on defense, if their families of the military ask, are our loved ones in uniform going to be given the equipment to carry out the missions our country is asking of them in a way that maximizes their ability to succeed and protects them? I don't think anybody in the military can say yes. I couldn't say yes if that was the case. And so I'm disappointed here. I'll say one other thing, because we're also focused on jobs and the economy. The American military doesn't just protect our security and advance our ideals as it does, and live by our ideals as it does, but it also has a tremendous positive impact on our economy. It's the American military that is the foundation of an international system of stability and security that has undergirded, that has been the precondition of the enormous economic growth that has happened in America and in a lot of other places in the world, where hundreds of millions, probably billions of people have come out of poverty because they could rely on the safety of the sea lanes. They could rely on an order in the world in places like Asia and Europe and throughout the world. And if the American military is cut as much, in the worst case, as this proposal would cut it, it's the beginning of the end of America as a great international power. It's the beginning of the end of this system of international security that has undergirded our prosperity and so much of the prosperity in the world. Which other nation will assume the responsibility that we have? And we benefited from it greatly. It is a statement that we are prepared to decline as a country. I come back and say again that to get us out of the fiscal hole we in the federal government have put this country into, everybody's going to have to give. Everybody's going to have to take cuts. And that includes defense. And there's a lot that could be cut out of defense. But there's also a lot that has to be changed in entitlement spending. And there are people who are getting away with tax loopholes that ought to be paying more in taxes. Everybody's got to contribute to solve this national crisis. And right now, this proposal is unfair because it asks contributions, cuts, sacrifice only from the recipients of discretionary spending, and that means while all of them should be paying, should be accepting cuts, they're being asked to take cuts that are unfair and counterproductive to our security, to our liberty, to our prosperity, to our morality as a country that's always taken care of people who couldn't take care of themselves. If these discretionary cuts go into effect, all that will be jeopardized. And so I've come to say this to my colleagues and to say, frankly, that I haven't decided how I'm going to vote on this. I understand that the proposal does prevent the default, and it does begin some process of cuts, and it has this committee which offers the most hope. But on the other hand, I see in front of me a mechanism set up here which I think, if it goes to its conclusion, will have not a net positive effect on our future if the committee's work is not good and accepted by Congress, but a net negative effect on America's future. I thank the chair, and I yield the floor.